have the Democrats learned nothing? Now, in the midst of their crushing defeat on Election Day, Democrats should be, in my opinion, they should be running to the left. After all, they put up the most centrist, the most establishment Democrat that they could, and they ended up losing the Electoral College despite winning the popular vote by about, nearly 3 million votes now? Almost? 2 million at least, right? Now, look, what you had here is, yes, you had fairly low turnout, and you had a base that really wasn't excited about the establishment. Okay, so you would think that the Democrats, upon seeing all this stuff, would think, hey, maybe we should embrace the populism of Bernie Sanders. It would be the smart thing to do, right? No, well, no, of course not. Because remember, this is the Democratic Party we're talking about, and they've learned absolutely nothing. In fact, I've reported before, they're putting up Chuck Schumer as Senate Minority Leader. Nancy Pelosi is likely going to retain her seat as the House Minority Leader. They still haven't fired Donna Brazile from the DNC chair. I don't know why. And now the head of the Democratic Party, Barack Obama, is endorsing Clinton surrogate Tom Perez for the spot for the DNC chair. Now, you've got a race here. You've got Howard Dean laughably throwing in his hat. Yeah, good luck, dude. All right. You're the last person I want to see. You fucking sellout. Anyway, he's a health insurance lobbyist. Howard fucking Dean. Anyway, and he said some pretty terrible things about Bernie Sanders during the primary. Then you have Keith Ellison, who is a progressive. Now, look, Jimmy Dore. I like Jimmy Dore. I agree with most of what he says, but when he goes after Keith Ellison, I think he's wrong on that. And look, Tim Black, I've had some issues with Tim Black, but I agree with him 100% on the pick of Keith Ellison. He tweeted out the Keith Ellison's voting record on war, and it showed how stridently anti-war Keith Ellison is. Every vote he's taken is against conflict. Okay, that's a pretty good record. And he's like, hey, I love Jimmy, but come on, dude. You're like Keith Ellison, at least on the subject of war, is actually very progressive. He's an anti-war candidate. So that's good. I definitely agree with Black on this. Look, I don't have any personal bad feelings against Tim Black. He's a good guy. I just disagreed with a couple of the things that he's done. And I did it in the wrong way. So, anyway. That whole thing aside, you also have, Tulsi Gabbard's not really in the running, but now you've got Tom Perez. Great. Okay, here we go. Obviously, they haven't learned a damn thing. Now, the position of DNC chair, I think, is pretty important because basically what you're doing is you're steering the Democratic Party in whatever direction. If you're in the case of Howard Dean, you're steering it more in the corporatist direction. If you're going to go with Keith Ellison, that's a bit more progressive. And Tom Perez, also I would assume to be more establishment friendly. Okay? Now, as I said, my hope is that it would go in a progressive direction, but it seems like the establishment says, no, we're not going to go progressive at all. That's not what we do here. We're not the progressive party. We're the centrists. We're the center-right party. I mean, because the country's center-right. No, it's not center-right. You're absolutely wrong when you go down issue by issue, poll by poll. You realize that the country is far more progressive than we give it credit for. Okay? But they don't understand this. Now, look, as far as DNC positions goes, Bernie Sanders, I reported on that Bernie Sanders had got a position in the DNC. They essentially created it for him. Okay, look, at the time I didn't think anything of it, but now thinking about it and, rolling it over my head, it's like, wait a minute. They created a position out of nothing. Did they do that just to appease him? My guess, yes. And basically what it is that he's a mascot. Chair of outreach, right? Look, I think outreach is a good thing. I think the Democratic Party needs to reach out to working class people, but they actually need to really do it in their actions, not just by appointing Bernie Sanders, who, look, in that position, I have no doubt in the world that Bernie Sanders is going to fight like hell to actually do progressive policies and to do progressive priorities and to actually reach out to these people. But it's not just him. He doesn't control all these things. It's actually the Democratic Party, and their actions speak louder than words. So that's the problem that I have with this. Now, Bernie Sanders, knowing him, he will not be content to fall in line. Likely that position is not going to hold him down for all that long. He's going to come out strong. But, so as far as the progressive in the Democratic Party go, look, having somebody like Keith Ellison or Tulsi Gabbard as a DNC chair would make a pretty big difference and might actually draw in some of the Bernie Sanders supporters who haven't completely fled the Democratic Party, because it shows that, hey, you're at least willing as a party to put somebody in the lead that's going to go to a new progressive direction. And I think that's what we need, what they need to do. However, as I said, Barack Obama's coming in and saying, no, let's keep the ship steady. Let's not rock the boat. Let's continue to go onward, corporatist, establishment-friendly status quo. Onward status quo. Despite the fact that, of course, right now, the whole ship has leaned far to the right and essentially has dumped off all the progressives into the ocean. And that's what I feel like they've been doing. And so that's the problem here. Okay. Now, the New York Times recently reported that Obama's advisors had discussed Secretary Tom Perez, Labor Secretary, and former Michigan Governor Jennifer Granholm as assuming the DNC chair position over Ellison. Perez and Granholm were both surrogates for the Clinton campaign during the 2016 presidential election. Well, already there, huge red flag. What happened to supporting progressives? Well, they don't really seem to have much of an interest in doing so. Now, personally, look, I don't have any issues with Tom Perez, personally, or even with Jennifer Granholm. Hell, she was my governor for a while. Okay, perfectly lovely people. She was in Michigan. However, I do think that she gave way too many tax breaks to large corporations while she was governor of Michigan. She was far too corporate friendly. And that's my whole problem with the establishment. They are too friendly with the corporations. It's not that they're bad people, it's that they're bought. Now, Perez was on a list compiled by the Clinton campaign also as a potential running mate for Hillary Clinton before she picked Tim Kaine, who nobody gave a shit who that was. Who is this guy, and why do we care? And even up to the end of the election, who was this guy, who's Tim Kaine, and why do we care? Worst pick ever. You could have picked a rock and painted a smiley face on it, and it probably would have pulled better than Tim Kaine. I'm just saying. It would have been more exciting than Tim Kaine. Just saying. Now, interesting note, Warren was also tapped as a potential running mate for their candidate. I remember Wall Street coming out and saying, you better not pick Elizabeth Warren or we're going to cut off the money. That money, gone. You're not going to have it anymore if you pick Elizabeth Warren. And they said, oh, okay, not going to do it. Not going to do it. Fuck you, progressives. We're going to go with the safe establishment choice. Now, I also wonder, I got to ask you, was Bernie Sanders at all considered? He probably would have gotten the same treatment as Elizabeth Warren. But anyway. Now, there were emails released by WikiLeaks from Clinton campaign chair John Podesta that include Perez providing the campaign with extensive feedback and advice throughout the primaries. Now, this shows how close of the relationship Perez had with the Clinton campaign. Well, in my view, why would you want to associate yourself with losers? Why would the DNC want to associate itself with a losing campaign? Why? It makes no sense. But again, this is establishment groupthink. No, we didn't lose, rightly so, because of, our close ties to the establishment. We lost because we weren't conservative enough. We were too liberal. And I guarantee that's the thought that's going through their head. These damn Bernie Sanders bros, they hurt Hillary Clinton, but they're too progressive, so they never would have gotten elected anyway. But they damaged Hillary Clinton so bad that's why she lost. No, that's not why she lost. She lost because she was a bad candidate, and I don't know how many times I have to say it. She was a bad, terrible candidate. And WikiLeaks also revealed that Granholm was working for Priorities USA, right? Now, that was before Clinton formally announced her run. And Granholm was also frequently cited as a Clinton campaign surrogate, utilized throughout the primaries to push back and to fight against Sanders. Again, I've got nothing personal against Jennifer Granholm. I just think she's too pro-establishment, too pro-corporate. And so I don't want her in that position. That is not what the Democratic Party needs. It needs progressive leadership. But again, I don't think they're going to have the sense and the wherewithal to think, yes, let's go in a progressive direction. Instead, it's going to be establishment steady as we go. And according to The Observer, the New York Times cited anonymous critics of Sanders and progressive wing of the Democratic Party to affirm that the Democratic Party establishment has no intent to yield any of their political power and privilege to Sanders progressives, even if that means continuing to lose more elected office. Look, you ain't got much more to lose. The presidency, the Congress, most of the state houses and legislatures across the country, there ain't much left for you to lose, Democrats. Their strategy, if that's true, is to literally cut off your nose to spite your fucking face. That is not smart. That is stupid. And I have to be honest, nobody is actually that stupid. The Democrats can't be this inept, this terrible at campaigning, this bad of a party. The only theory that makes sense with the Democratic Party is that they have essentially been co-opted and paid to lose. I mean, look at it this way. Wall Street gives millions and millions of dollars to weak-kneed Democrats. They push the party to run against progressive principles that happen to be incredibly popular. And look, they end up losing. Why? Because you put up somebody who's essentially Republican light versus a really Republican who tends to, do some populist campaigning. Well, what's going to happen? The Democrat, or the light Republican, I should say, they're going to lose, and that's exactly what happens every single time. Now, at this point, I hate to say it, but the Democratic Party is a party of losers. And I hate saying it because there are plenty of great progressives that are Democrats. Bernie Sanders, Keith Ellison, Tulsi Gabbard. And there are others that I do not want to see lumped into this because they are actually fighting. They actually want to win. And the problem isn't with them. I think it's with the leadership. And we've had since the 1990s, progressivism has been replaced in the Democratic Party with corporatism. And look, when you have more corporatism, you have more corporate money in politics, well, that corrupts. More money means more Democrats are getting paid to lose, more money in the system. And that's what's going on today. Now, if we were ever going to create a real progressive party that can actually take on the two-party system, we've got to eliminate that moneyed influence, that corporate influence, and that means getting rid of the money. Because that, after all, that is the root of all the evils in this party.
We are not meant to live in shame and weakness and disgrace. We were not meant to beg for moral validation from some of the most despicable creatures to ever populate the planet.